What is up, guys? Welcome to a new video. Today is basically a part 2 of this video, my things to focus on to carry at lower ranks. If you didn't already know, I have a second YouTube channel right now where I'm doing an Unranked to Diamond series, uploading a game every single day, explaining my thought process and stuff like that as I play. But anyway, I just completed my placements and there are a few more things I can add to that first video about what the most important things are going to be to focus on. Make sure you do check out the first video I did after this one because they're going to be different points, and if you're interested in gameplays or learning how to climb more, then make sure you come over to my second channel. Anyway, let's jump into the first thing. So working out how you're actually going to win the game at the start so you can kind of adjust how you play. That might be a little bit vague, I think, actually, so we're going to go over some specific situations to do this in. So the first one is like your champion. Like, what is your champion good at? How are they actually going to win the game? I played jungle Kog'Maw in one of my games. My team started to lose their lanes, but instead of rushing to help them, which I'm not really good at doing, I farmed up, got my blood razor, and then went to help once I had my damage. Kog is a late game champion, right? If I had stopped farming to try and help, we probably would have lost, but with those items I was able to do more and we actually won in the end. The other thing is just like your team comp versus their team. What do you have? What do they have? What are you good at doing and what are they good at doing? Stuff like that. It's a bit more of a weird example, but the person who was supposed to play AD in one of my games didn't look and he actually picked Karma instead of thinking he was mid, I guess. The enemy team actually had a jungle Kog this time, so they had 2 AD carries and we didn't have one at all. It meant if the game went really late we'd probably lose, so I adjusted my play. I roamed really heavily. I was much more aggressive, knowing that if I didn't snowball and win early, we'd probably lose. Figuring out how you're actually going to win is really important. A lot of people at lower ranks just kind of stroll through the game, I guess. They like make plays if they're right in front of them, but they don't have a specific aim or anything in mind. Not only is that like not the best idea anyway, but if your opponent does have a plan, then they're going to control the entire game and you'll be playing catch up. So just a few things to keep in mind is like if your team is all one stat, so all AD damage or all AP, then you can still win, but going late game is going to make it a lot harder with them stacking one defensive stat. You have to consider like late game versus early game champions or team fight versus small fights. Smaller fight champions are kind of like pick champions, right? They're harder to recognize, I guess, but like Elise is a pick champion and Mumu is going to be a team fight champion. The second thing is thinking ahead. People are very predictable and so is League actually in a way. There's normally always an optimal play that most people are going to do, but that is going to let us outplay a lot more. You know how like your favorite pro players make these disgusting outplays or flash mouth outs and stuff? Those are almost always down to prediction and not pure god level reaction speed. Well, some are, but most of them aren't. What I mean is we play this game so much and we've thought about what's going to happen, so we already have a really solid idea of how to play the fight before it's actually even started. The problem with this is if they do something else, it'll throw you off a little bit, but at lower ranks, people are more than likely going to make the obvious play. This is super easy to start doing as well. Just think about the stuff before a fight breaks out so you don't have to do it in the heat of the moment. But some of this is like champion specific, like how you play a situation. As Tristana, I was against a Morgana one game. Because my W jump has a cast time, if I get too close to her, even if I jump the bind, it will actually hit me and I'll be snared as I land. So that means I can't get close in the first place. Amumi though is a much shorter stun duration with his Q. That means I can get close and as soon as he starts to use it at me, I jump away, I get hit, but by the time I land, I actually won't be stunned anymore. You can see knowing those two things and planning them out in advance actually makes me play the fight much differently. I can get close to Mumu, but I can't really get that close to Morgana. It's even things like against a Vayne, right? Never stand next to a wall, so always fight her in the open. You know that really, like everyone does, and just by thinking about it in advance, like okay, the way I lose this is if she stuns me, it means in the actual fight you won't be making that mistake. This can also just be how you actually play team fights in general. I see a lot of people run in and not expect to get destroyed, when to me I'm sitting here thinking it's really obvious that they will. The reason it's obvious to me is one where it gets experience. You can kind of make up for that by pressing tab in advance and thinking to myself, okay, these are the things that are going to kill me, so I have to avoid those things. Against like an Amumu, it means waiting for him to use his ult on your team and not on you, or against a LeBlanc, letting her use a combo on someone else, avoiding a Morgana Q. All of those things are much easier to avoid if you're already thinking about it. There is actually a lot of thought that goes into every skirmish, every 2v2 or fight in League, and if you think ahead and plan it out, then you'll be able to outplay a ton more. Those outplays are going to add up. They'll be highlight reels that make you feel better about yourself, they'll make you feel really cool, but you'll get more kills, you'll die less, and overall have a much easier time in the game. So number 3 is playing from behind. There are a few games where we got pretty smashed in the lane phase, to be honest, and then had to recover the game. 2 of those games I managed to win and 1 I didn't. The one we didn't, we actually managed to drag it out and almost win though. It gave us a much better chance instead of rolling over and doing nothing. That chance is what won us the other 2 games as well. These are the things I did though. So I actually talked to my team. I said how we'd probably win the game, what we need to do and aim for, which you might be surprised at because normally I say don't open your mouth. These are going to be things that will actually help though. So just like use our towers. We have a late game team, let them make a mistake. They're throwing the game. Anything to encourage them a little bit and and try to give them a bit of hope that we can still win the game. If they have no hope, they're not going to try. The second thing is using towers. A tower is like a 6th player on the team. It hurts. It's not likely to die during the fight either. It sounds kind of obvious, I know, but how many times do you fight just in front of your tower or off to the side in the jungle? If you're behind, you glue to that thing, wave clear, and let them get impatient. It's very hard for them to actually siege down towers with you underneath them, and that is how you stop the bleeding in the game. Third thing is you farm some more, but you actually ward the jungle as you're doing it. You want to take every single bit of farm on the map. You need the gold, but you need to ward the jungle to stop them killing people in the side lanes as they do it. Blue trinkets are really good for this. You place them in uncommon bushes to keep track of where they are. Even if it gets destroyed, you know someone was at least there. The most important thing is actually just grouping. If you group as 5, it encourages the enemy team to group as 5. That means you're both getting the same amount of gold in one lane. It's not getting any worse. It also means that you can't get caught, which is how, honestly, I probably won most of my games. A top laner or an AD carry farming bottle top at their inner tower thinking they're safe, only to get boned by 4 of us. That probably won us at least half of my games. All we'd have to do is just like push mid, then someone is going to split off and go to a side lane, so we go down there, we roam, someone's alone, and we get them and a tower afterwards. So those are going to be the main things you farm. You play to your win conditions. Like early game champions, you take more risk. Late game, you just farm and hold on. You group up and you try to encourage your team. The fourth one is something I get asked a lot actually. What do I do with my lead once I get it? And this one is actually always been hard for me to answer because it really depends on the elo you're at. Like it's different the higher you go. A lot of the placement games were snowballs for me. The biggest thing I did was I just kept my foot on the gas the entire time. I didn't let up and I kept pushing and taking towers. There is a very common misconception that once you get a lead, you should group and play Aram down a lane. Just keep pushing mid until you miraculously crack open their base. That's not really how it works, to be honest. You want to keep extending your lead. The whole point is to grow the gold lead you have even more. If both teams are going to be grouped as 5 mid lane, unless you have amazing poke or you can dive, which is kind of risky, you're both only getting 1 lane's worth of gold. Both teams are getting the same gold income. That is honestly one of the worst things you can actually do, and so many times I had to tell my team to farm side lanes or take dragons and stuff. All they wanted to do was push a lane, but unless we have a way to get something, then we're just stalling the game out for the enemy team. So we want to take stuff that grows our lead, right? In 5 minutes time, we want to have an extra 1,000 gold while they only have an extra 500. That is kind of actually what wins games. The easiest ways to do it really would be team fighting when you're ahead. You can catch people, roam to side lanes, or make them come to you outside for an objective. The most common thing I saw was the good old roam. People stayed in their lanes for a long time. It meant we could like roam through their jungle and just collapse on people. You can also do this with objectives like dragons. You can make people come out and fight you. Towers as well. Getting towers is probably the easiest way to actually snowball a game. To be honest, those are the only things I look to do when ahead. Nothing too complicated at all. You find people alone and you kill them. You take towers after that and rinse and repeat. If I couldn't find anyone to kill, I took dragons or I just farmed, and if all else fails, we de-ward Baron, we fight them when they come, or we just take it. I honestly don't think diving is ever an amazing option at lower ranks either. I saw so many mistakes when diving, and 2 of those games I won in my placements were because the enemy team threw their lead diving. Roaming kind of leads on from pushing our lead. My CS totals in the 10 games I played were actually really bad. I did okay in the lane phase most of the time, but outside of that, I didn't farm much, honestly. I put a priority on grouping with my team instead. From the first video I did, I learned that you shouldn't really rely on your team too much to make the correct or optimal play, but instead create situations where they don't have to. 5v4s are the easy examples, so even when they mess up their spell rotation or they position badly, with the extra person you're likely to still come out on top of that fight. There were a lot of games before where the correct play was to go and farm bot lane, but as soon as I did, my team would fight and they'd lose. So this time around, even if there was a remote chance they'd get screwed, I just stayed and lost the farm. Basically, instead of farming, I thought to myself, okay, who can I kill and what can I take after they're dead? Most of the time the goal was towers, so after I got my lane tower, I'd roam mid, try to gank the mid laner and take their tower. A lot of the time I died in these games as well, or sometimes I just completely cocked it up, but the other times were due to a lack of wards. Like I was an idiot and assumed no one would be there and I would die for it. That is obviously my mistake right there for not warding and running a risky path, but the enemy team would be doing exactly the same. They'd run through their jungle instead of running around it. They'd run up the river or push with no vision in lanes. A lot of the time I'd hear them say like, oh, I didn't expect them to be there, or I didn't realize they weren't bot anymore. These are things you can fix with a ward and some map awareness. Honestly, those things will fix over time, but it's not even about focusing on fixing them, it's focusing on abusing the enemy doing it. This is also just in the lane phase though, so roaming to get kills is way more effective than I ever really imagined, honestly, probably because I mainly play AD carry. I played mid lane twice in my placements this time though, and both times I just roamed around the map all the time, especially bot lane, and I killed as many people as I could. Not only did I get the good old like nice tent you set up RE from the enemy Jhin in all chat, which means he's tilted, but we managed to control towers and dragons items from those kills as well. The funny thing is, the enemy mid laner didn't play that badly in the Ari game. She farmed well. She actually out-farmed me in the lane phase. She even killed me when I dived like a moron, but because I roamed and she didn't, I was having a ton more impact on the map, and we ended up snowballing pretty hard. So that is my part 2 of this series, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you check out part 1. Make sure you check out my gameplay channel, but that's going to be all for this video, so I'll leave you with the robots.